are all consumers, and sometimes as consumers we are taken for a ride by spurious vendors, scam artists, and even some professionals and businesses. So how do we know that we've hired the right contractor for house repair or entered a fair transaction? Well, there are local government agencies and also the Better Business Bureau who can help you out before you become a victim. In a 3-part interview, Ray Hickman talks to Evan Johnson, an attorney with the Montgomery County Division of Consumer Affairs, on how we can be smart consumers.
Often it becomes really kind of confusing, I think, to the consumer, in this case the viewer of this program, as to the difference between our Better Business Bureaus and our divisions of consumer affairs. Perhaps on a more practical nature, where do I go first when I need help specifically in certain areas?
Well, you can pick either. First, the main difference between the Better Business Bureau of the Washington area, first of all, does cover the entire area. Mm-hmm. They are funded by business, and they handle complaints against business. The main difference between them and consumer affairs offices is consumer affairs offices have some legal authority. If your complaint is not satisfied, we may have some teeth to help you. And the Better Business Bureau, in the final analysis, all they can say is that the merchant has not resolved the complaint or does not cooperate with us or something like that, but there's no more. We'd like to think we're both good sources of information. And the BBB services those areas of the Washington area that does not have a consumer office.
Great. Now, does that mean that Better Business then, if they have specific problems, they can come to your division and work hand in hand with you? What kind of cooperation is there between Better Business and the Division of Consumer Affairs?
Well, because we are a law enforcement agency, there's not a lot of projects we work on directly with them. Their mission is somewhat different. But in our consumer education function, we work very closely with them, and they have a lot of the same types of information, I think.
Tell us about the consumer education program, then. How does that work?
Well, there are a number of places. One is the Better Business Bureau, and one is consumer protection agencies, all of which have websites. I believe we have a website for some basic information. The basic common sense things that are so important that we do as consumers, you can get at any site. The federal government agencies, the Federal Trade Commission has a wonderful website with information for consumers too. But when you get into the specifics of a problem, if you're getting into that and you have specific questions about I did this, I did that, it would be good to deal with a consumer protection agency that knows the laws in your particular state. Because unfortunately around here it is confusing because we have Virginia, D.C., and Maryland all with different laws. And when we have people from Virginia who buy in Maryland, and Maryland law would govern that, and it's a different situation. We actually tell us that some people come into Montgomery County because they know that our office has a fairly good reputation for handling consumer complaints, and they patronize our merchants because they know that we're around. We like to hear that.
Since we're talking about consumer complaints, what kinds of frauds and scams are going on in this area now that are particularly hot topics? And probably there are some frauds and scams going on that have been going on since biblical times that continue on in this area.
A couple of things that are going on that we're concerned about right now is work-at-home opportunities that are getting publicized, it seems, more and more. If you read classifieds, particularly of local newspapers, you see the opportunity to earn tens of thousands at work at home. And our experience is that uniformly these things, they're really just schemes where you have to pay some money to get the information, first of all, and that's where they do it. And the only way you're going to make any money is if you do the same thing. You get people to pay you money to do the same thing. You're not going to do piecework. You're going to have to get into it and solicit people through deceptive ads to pay you money for giving them nothing if you're going to do that, and you don't want to do that. Uniformly, there is no miraculous way to get rich working at home in these things that are advertised. And I would tell people to shy away from that, particularly if they call up out of curiosity, but they have to send money, don't send it.
We had a representative from Better Business recently who said that he hadn't encountered one of these that was legitimate yet.
That's right. And we're actually doing some ongoing checking a little project of ours, and we haven't found any yet either that are legitimate.
Aren't these kind of scams especially appealing to, say, the elderly who may be retired and still capable of working, and suddenly it looks like, well, yeah, I can sit at home and I can earn some money.
It is a problem, and we get people who are calling us and asking us if any of these are legit, and we tell them basically no, none that we know of, and they're disappointed to hear that. But sometimes, accepting bad news is better than losing your money.
There must be other groups also that need to be especially wary. Maybe, new immigrants to the country is another. Certainly where there are language problems.
Yeah.
But what other areas are there also, and why are these groups so vulnerable?
Well, I think the new immigrants and anybody for whom English is not their first language is a problem. And if you're new to this country, even if you speak English well, but you're not used to the culture, it can be a problem, because you're getting used to a whole different feel and communication system, and you're not familiar with when somebody might be trying to rip you off as people who grew up here. We might have a little more experience with that.
I know my experience when I visit foreign countries is I'm rather slow to challenge.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to offend. I'm often not sure of customs, business practices and customs, and I find that I'm slow to challenge if I question the price of something. I'm sure that must happen to people coming to this country for the first time or who are relatively new here.
Well, that's right. And sometimes what we see, unfortunately, is that these people are being preyed on by other people from their country, for example, who are here, who they trust and don't question, but really are ripping them off. We would urge those, and some people have a problem with admitting that they got ripped off and don't contact government agencies.
There's another separate problem, and that is embarrassment and not wanting to report.
Yeah, that is a huge problem, and nobody should be embarrassed, because I can tell you we have heard just about everything.
Next week, Evan Johnson will talk with us about the hot scams and how people fall prey to people from their own community.